Are you feeling stuck, lost, or confused about what to do next in your career? Then the Manifest Your Career podcast is just right for you. I'm your host, Dr. Norma Reyes, a career mindset coach. I help successful Latinas who are battling self-doubt, self-sabotage, and imposter syndrome. I teach my clients how to combine their intuition, skills, and knowledge so that they can manifest their dream career. It's time you start listening to your inner wisdom and guidance. Tune in each week to the Manifest Your Career podcast and learn how to align your mindset to your career goals. Keep listening, and together we'll manifest your dream career. Hi everyone, welcome back. This is episode 47, and today I have another guest for you. I can't wait for you to hear her career journey. Her name is Celinda Farias Appleby, and she is the Director of Global Talent Acquisition for Visa. Celinda is a recognized leader in recruiting and employer branding. She has thrived in the global talent acquisition departments of Fortune 100s, creating innovative digital strategies for industry-leading companies like Nike, Oracle, and HP. Celinda specializes in designing premium experiences and stories centered around humanizing the talent attraction cycle. She's a recruiter by trade and has previously held recruiting roles within corporate and agency enterprises for the past 10 years. She's an avid sneakerhead and baseball mom who resides in Portland, Oregon, with her 14-year-old twin sons. Thank you, Sally, for joining us. I can't wait to hear all about your career journey and the career advice you're going to offer us. But first, tell us about your family background. Where did you grow up and who did you live with?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I've been a big fan of you for so long, following you on Instagram miraculously, I think last year, over your vision board class that you did. So it's been super great following you at your career path as well. So my family is Chilean, and my parents were teen parents when they had me. And we lived in the DC area, Silver Spring, Maryland, to be exact, is where I grew up. And I grew up with all my siblings, my grandparents, and I would say that in true immigrant fashion, a plethora of tios and tias coming through as they would immigrate into America. We were always the host family.
Yes. We didn't really grow up with our extended family, but every so often when my mom's family would come every few years, it was you're not in your room today. You sleep on the couch. Oh, okay.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So my dad is one of six, and all of his siblings moved to the DC area. So we grew up as a huge family. I'm like one of 40 cousins. And I was very lucky. My generation got to hang out together quite a bit because our grandparents would host every Sunday. So I will say, family-wise, I have a very large, healthy family, thank God.
That's beautiful. I'm sure that helped with a lot of different challenges you guys faced. So when you were young and people asked you what you wanted to be when you grew up, what do you recall telling them?
I love this question. I wanted to be a lawyer all the time from day one. My little Barbie's name was Samantha Smith. She was an attorney. And I think I carried that passion all the way through high school. I was part of the Future Lawyers of America group and even got to go to court with that group and stuff. I obviously didn't pursue that path because law school was very expensive and my parents didn't have the money to afford any kind of college, to be honest. And so I will say the rude awakening happened between high school and college registrations where I changed my path.
Okay. And whom do you recall as some of your earliest career role models that you imagine yourself growing up to be like?
Do you remember Christina, the talk show on?
Yes. Yes, you could be her
I
too.
loved Yeah, I loved Christina. I always wanted to like be her, and you know how she always had that sentimental side, and she could get people to open up. I will say that that was probably my first idol, but I've always been a huge fan of Oprah too as a child. I just think that they have both of them have a way with people that I admired. Even with tough, difficult conversations, they were able to really get people to open up.
Yeah, I totally forgot about Christina. So it was good. It was good. So then now tell us about your educational background. Did you go to college right after high school and how did that unfold for you?
Yes, I did. I went to Trinity College in DC. I actually applied to numerous places and got into all of my accepted colleges. I was, fun fact, I was a little bit of a nerd growing up, cool nerd, if you will. My parents were immigrants, so very studious, focused on my studies. And so I got into all the schools, UPenn, University of Maryland, but Trinity gave me a scholarship, and with our financial situation, it just made the most sense. College was very hard for me because Trinity was a private all women school. All of my peers that went there, which I'm still really good friends with, came from private Catholic schools, and I grew up in a low to middle class area, very diverse, more Latinos and Black African American folks than Caucasian folks. And I will not saying my education was bad, but when you compared it to a private upstate New York Catholic education, I definitely struggled to catch up to my peers.
Yeah, definitely. I would imagine it's more rigorous. And then you also probably had somewhat of a culture shock too.
Oh, I don't think we did homework in the way that these women did homework, or the books that they had already read, and they had been in that Catholic education system, which I had not. And so I will say freshman year was very hard. I also lived on campus, so it was the first time I was away from my family for an extended time. And I, of course, took full advantage of the freedom. So you combine that with struggling for the first time, because I've always been an overachiever with freedom. I will say freshman year was hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I went to a state school. So, was it more rigorous than my probably low income education? But I'm sure it was. And I don't really think that was the problem why I didn't do well. My freshman year, I got like my 2.3 GPA. I didn't even realize how close I was to like being like at academic probation.
Mm,
But yeah, fortunately, I wasn't. And I knew that I needed to change something. Part of it was just that I had never learned how to actually study
right.
because I would go to class, just be there, take a few notes, and get an A.
Mhm.
But in college, I mean, I guess you can kind of do that if you pay attention, but I don't think I ever paid attention in class in the beginning. Like, I just figured I'd just sit there and somehow just pass the test like I always did before.
Yeah, I agree. Plus, our class sizes were smaller in college. I think my largest class was like 35 women. And I came from such a big public high school that I think there was so much attention also that was being given to me that I wasn't used to in college. And I had to work, so part of my student loan required, me working in the student affairs department. And I will say my peers weren't in that same similar boat. Not to make excuses, but I agree with you. I definitely wasn't taught to study or sit. I don't even think I had homework that much growing up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you're probably right. I don't know. It's been too long for me to really remember. So I had the opposite experience. It was like in a classroom of like 500. So all of my freshman classes were like, I was one in a sea of people. And, even though it was only an hour north, it did feel like I was like one of the very few brown people in the class, like, out of the 500. At the time, the university, I want to say, was about 70 to 80% white. Now it's a Hispanic serving institute, but at the time it wasn't. And in my time there, it was transitioning, but it was difficult to really just feel like I fit in. Okay. So now I want to hear how your career unfolded after you completed college.
So during college, I bartended and I was really good at it. And I made a lot of money, and to be fair, I had to work all through high school. And so I forget what minimum wage was, but it wasn't what it is now. And so comparing like my minimum wage job at cashier job at Kmart to the bartending, it was like night and day, immediate cash flow. And so when I graduated college, I didn't want a job. I just wanted to stay bartending. And of course, my immigrant parents were like, are you crazy? Like, no. And so they forced me to get a job at least part time in an office setting. And I ended up at a staffing company and I was adamant. I was like, I'm just answering your phones, with my little clickety clackety long acrylics. And they're like, okay, well, you're never going to be a recruiter. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means, but I'm going to just answer your phones. And we had a clear understanding and I got hired immediately. And to flash forward there, I was a terrible receptionist, but a really good recruiter. I hung up on people all the time, but we would sit in these meetings back then it would be the bullpen and they would talk about their open recs. And I would say, well, what about that, candidate that came in? I'd pull their file. I'm like, they're a perfect match. And so within a week, they pulled me from the front desk and moved me to the bullpen. And I will say I immediately fell in love with recruiting. I love, and not so much the process and all of the minutia that comes with the job, but I love helping people find a job that's going to elevate them. That's been the core of how I've recruited my whole life.
Yes, I absolutely love that. So one of my first jobs out of college, it was like my second job, was working for human resources for Six Flags. And I loved the interviewing part where I got to decide where they went in the park. Um, and I like to pride myself that I did a great job. I still do a great job picking who I select for my team currently. It definitely is a skill, right? And seeing that people have value, every person has a value. It's just a matter of finding the right role for them. So that's amazing. And it sounds like you learned that really young. I wish I had had a similar opportunity because I know that I love the whole staffing industry and everything because I just think it's like an opportunity to learn about industries, but not really being in them.
Correct. No, and I worked for a finance and accounting firm, and I to this day still count with my fingers. So I can't say that I was like really good at the finance side. I remember we had a client call and say they needed someone with journaling experience. Now we know what journaling means, right? General ledger and whatnot. I took that as like journaling in your diary, and I was like, oh my god, I write in my diary every day too. So I was definitely a mess in my baby, recruiting days. But I agree, it's a skill. And I think it's centered on that core human piece, right? Because if you're able to see this person in your organization, it's a matter of finding where, right? The job can be duplicitous, but what team will they shine the best at? That's the part I love.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, your current org is lucky to have you. So now I want to hear how that first job to where you are now. Let's share your career journey.
Ooh, so I stayed in staffing for quite some time. I'll be very honest with you. Job hopper is a word that doesn't even make me feel bad because I definitely have been a career mover. And I tell people to do that. Primarily because you have to find the right fit. And second of all, there's more money on the table. And sometimes as a Latina, they know that they can hire me less because I was making less, right? And so they give me a little jump. It's been great. So I jumped around in staffing, supporting multiple amazing clients for different roles across the C-suite all the way down to reception and really loved it. In 2007, the economy, we had our first little economy crash. I was also pregnant with the boys. I have twins. And And I decided, I was like, I want stability. What does stability look like? I'm a big law of attraction and vision boarder, which is how I found you. And so I sat and mapped it out. And for me, corporate America became an obsession. And so I started really trying to figure out how to break into it. And I broke into HP. I introduced you to my friend Gina Porto not too long ago. Her brother got me the job at HP. And that was in 2009 or 10. And I joined as a recruiter and stayed at HP for about 5 years. The beautiful part, what I will say about HP, is that they had an amazingly well-ran human resources operation or a people org, and you were able to raise your hands to try out new things on top of your work duties. And that to me is amazing. Like, I love a little buffet of career mobility. And I learned employer branding and recruitment marketing in that capacity. I helped them launch a career site. I helped them create a Facebook for the first time. I mean, this is so antiquated, but because of HP, I completely changed from recruiting into the recruitment marketing space, or talent attraction, as you call it. Everybody calls it something else. And I've been sitting in this space for the past 15 years. I left HP, went to Oracle, then I went to Nike, and I'm currently at Visa.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I won't make you share any chisme on any of those, but
Happy to share. Happy to share.
So, in your current role, can you tell us just a little bit more of what you're currently doing at Visa?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been with Visa for about 3.5 years. I am the director of global talent attraction. And basically, how I like to describe that, to you, my parents don't really get it yet, but I'm responsible for all of the tools, strategies, tactics that the candidate engages with, or a job seeker engages with, before they hit apply. Once they hit apply, it's another organization's, not a problem, but it's a little swim lane to manage. So this means things like managing the career site, managing our technology tools like LinkedIn and Glassdoor, managing all of our digital profiles, content, stuff like that.
So interesting. So kind of like the candidate journey, you have like the first leg of it, kind of
The
bringing
front
them
end.
in.
Yes.
Okay. So now a little more about you and your career. So what has been the most influential experience in your career so far?
That's a hard question. And I did read it before. So I will say having children definitely changed me. And what I mean by that is, people will call me type A or super organized. And I have an internal little chuckle, because prior to having children, and I will say probably age 2 or 3, I was not organized. I was the friend that was showing up 45 minutes late, like your true blue Thea, right? Like, always, never very organized. But having twins, or being a mom in general, I think kind of forces you to be a little bit more organized. And I've been able to carry that into my career by being more organized and more detail oriented and focused on time and calendar. That has opened doors, because leaders love that, right? Leaders love a good organized type A human. And because of that pivotal change, I will say, has opened more doors in my career.
Yes, motherhood will change us. And sometimes, what we need, because for me, I feel like it was the opposite. When you said that people would call you type A and then you had a chuckle, is like, I'm sure lots of people probably called me that in the past, and maybe some people still do. And I'll look back and I'd be like, I really wasn't that rigid. But then I have to admit, I really was pretty rigid. But I've grown since becoming a mother, and the way I became a mother was a little bit different. I became a mother at 25 to a 4.5-year-old. So I didn't have to do that. I like to say I didn't have to do the diapers and all of that stuff, but I also had no idea what the heck I was doing.
Listen, I love that you started at 4.5. I joke all the time that for me, like, the baby stage was really hard, because I like instant gratification and I love real time feedback, and babies don't do that. So when they started talking and being more vocal, when people hate the terrible twos and threes, I love them because I was finally able to get some sort of reaction I could work
Yeah.
with.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that it made it any easier for me since, like I said.
Absolutely not. And I will be totally honest with everyone. I wasn't the one that like babysat my siblings or even volunteered to babysit. Like, in fact, when I was pregnant with twins, my entire family was like, "Oof, but wow, okay." Like, 'cause there wasn't a maternal bone in my body to, you definitely get it. You do get it with your children.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was absolutely me. Like, I probably had changed a handful of diapers in my lifetime
Yes.
and no babysitting anybody. So, yeah, completely clueless. Like, I think at
Same.
one point I had told my mom, and I look back, I'm like, why did I even tell her that? That wasn't even true. But it just shows like how our mindset, we are so in our mindset that we don't even realize, like, later we're like, why would I say that? Don't think that now.
Right.
But I remember telling my mom, like, I don't think I want to have kids. And she's like, yeah, that's okay. Not everyone's meant to have kids. And I was so like taken aback. Like, that's rude, mom.
Oh, I can't believe you said that because I said I wasn't getting married and I said I was never having children. And my first fiance was the same. Like we didn't want to have babies. And ultimately, right before we got married, I had this like really big change of heart and I'm like, am I really going to marry someone and we're never like what if I change my mind? Like what if I do want to have kids? And so I'm glad that my heart changed and reconsidered, but I do think my whole idea of not wanting children came from a place that we were so poor growing up and it seemed like such a struggle to be a parent in that environment. And I think when your life changes, right, even if it's like little baby changes, you're able to open up your heart and mind to new possibilities. And I think that that's what happened when I was like, okay, yeah, I'll have babies.
I don't even know why I even said it. I can't, I'm not even in that same headspace whatsoever. I'm gonna try to see if I can find any journal entries from then to see like what was going on that made me think that. Because now I'm like, why would I say that? I knew I always wanted to get married. I knew I wanted to have kids. Why did I say that in those moments? But what my mom said like stuck with me. Where like I guess her
Yeah.
reaction too was so accepting, right? Latina mom, like she already did have some grandchildren, so maybe it wasn't as big a deal. But
Yeah. But you still want her to be like, no, you're having a baby.
something it must have been. I'm like, why? I don't know. But anyway,
Maybe you were going through a rebellious stage and you're trying to push buttons, and
maybe
then you got exactly what you didn't want. And you're like, what is this? I don't want
that, yeah,
this.
it could have been that, right? And then, became a mom. And for anybody wondering, I became a mom to my niece. And so it was an interesting experience becoming a parent at 25 from one day to the next. I had like any typical 25-year-old, I drank and ate my money. And yeah, that's pretty much what happens, I think, at 25.
Yeah, would expect nothing less.
Okay, so then now what have been some of your career challenges that you have faced?
Okay, this is such a good question because I will say adaptability. I'm so adaptable to feedback and I love feedback. But every job that I've worked at, and I'm going to just center this conversation on corporate America because that's sort of like the sweet spot, I think. Every company has their own culture, every company has their own vibe or mantras and I find that I come into every job being the person I think they want me to be, and then learn quickly, like, oh, we don't do that here. Like, we do it this way. And then I adjust my sales and I, flourish in that job. And then I go to the new job, and all of a sudden, the things I have to unlearn what I learned before. And I don't think they do this to well represented groups of human beings. I find this is a struggle that happens more to historically excluded humans, right? And I think it primarily, speaking as a Latina first gen, I think it's easy to say, hey, I don't like the way you wrote that email, where you probably wouldn't coach a Caucasian male the same way. And those have been some of my harder moments.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that. I can definitely see the times. And it's not just maybe Caucasians that are doing this, but also our own people. And it could just be that a person of color is just more comfortable coming to another person of color with an issue versus a white colleague.
Oh, it's definitely our people. The ones that you think, oh, we're comfortable. I can be myself around you. And then it's a little clip here, right? It's never like a big clip. It's just a clip of your soul one time, then a second time. And then before you know it, you're not yourself. And that's usually around the time I'm like, okay, I need to leave here. Like, where did Celinda go? Who am I now?
Yeah, that is so true. You made me have flashbacks of an old supervisor that I had and some of the conversations that, I'm like, at the time, I think I didn't ever say anything because it was like, I already knew like there was no point. Even before I had found out that there had been numerous like HR complaints about her to HR. And so some of the things that she had mentioned, like, so she hired me from a different unit. I had an experience for a year. I came in, and pretty much everybody in the team was leaving as I was coming in. I picked it up because I had already worked for a different unit, knew the job itself, not the department, but I picked it up and went running. And when it came time to do my annual review, she's like, well, you haven't been here that long and you've had these write offs. And mind you, like those write offs were not my doing. Like I just happened to be the one to be there. And so she's like, and I really actually didn't want to hire you for the position. I'm like, what did you even hire? Like, who says that? And why would you hire me if you weren't interested? After I'm here, the one running this, because there's no one else. Everyone has obviously left because you suck. And she's like, but your previous supervisor did rate you well, so you'll be getting a raise. Like, okay, like I earned that raise. Thank you. And I immediately wanted to walk out of there and just cry. And for everyone that knows me personally, like that's not my character, but that's how hard that stung.
No, I bet. And when you said that your manager said I didn't want to hire you, that's what happened to me at HP. This I fought so hard for that interview. It was an internal promotion from recruiter to program manager. They gave me a measly pay bump. And don't get me wrong, HP was a great company. Even my kids will tell you, like the perks were great, and I think I learned a lot. But that one manager said to me, you were never my first choice during annual review. And I don't know, but it stung. Like it just really broke my trust. I was unable to fully ever trust her, even though the backhanded compliment was like, "But you proved yourself, and you had a good year." That how she started it was just the end for me.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It made me think of another time where I worked at this grocery store this was like a teenager. I worked at this grocery store, and the manager, when he hired me, he's like, I'm gonna go ahead and give you a chance. I'm gonna take my risk with you. But I really wanted to work for the company. It's a grocery store. Everybody knows here. Everybody loves the store. And so like at the time, like I was like, yes, he's giving me a chance. But then as time went on, like I think maybe that same day or a couple of weeks later, like, but I'm an amazing person. I'm a hard worker. Like, what do you mean you're taking a chance on me? Like, what does that exactly mean? Like, if you don't think I'm good enough, why are you hiring me? Like, these mixed signals that we get.
Yeah, and then they set us up for failure because we feel like we have to prove ourselves, which if you know anything about people with anxiety, which I consistently have, having to prove yourself, being an overachiever, being a type A, you make more mistakes because you feel like you have to be this amazing person that you gave a chance to. And I have heard numerous times throughout my careers, we're going to take a chance on you. You don't have this, or you're missing this piece or that. Nobody wants to hear that. Just hire us. Nobody wants to hear that you're hiring a token or you're hiring someone that needs your help. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And hopefully, these microaggressions will just begin to come to light more as more people talk about them, right? I don't think I ever shared that with anyone.
No, I never say these things out loud. I will say, though, I want to go back to what you said, where you're like, this person had so many HR complaints. You later found out, but you never said anything. Me too. And I will say that was my experience at Nike, at Oracle. Like, I kept having microaggressions. People would say things that the employee handbook or an employment attorney would be like, what just happened? But I never felt comfortable going to HR or going to that website where you can anonymously complain. I just don't think it's in our DNA as Latinas to go, right? Like, you don't want to lose your job. You don't want to put a spotlight on yourself. What happens when they bring us both to the table? It's that conflict resolution that I struggle with on a daily basis. Who do I tell? Like, wow, you said something really inappropriate to me. Who do I tell? Where I will say well-represented groups in corporate America don't feel that way. Oh, they will in 1 second contact the VP of HR and let them know what happened.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And going to what you said about like who do we tell? Yeah, who am I gonna tell? I'm gonna tell my mom that, and what is my mom gonna tell you? She's either gonna not really have a response or just be like, pues, mija, dale duro, right? That's it.
That's exactly it. I stopped telling my family about my corporate problems. In fact, I don't even tell my family when I interview anymore. I just kind of just say, I'm getting a new job, because I don't think they understand the why I'm leaving, the process of looking for a new job. If they had it their way, I would still be at HP.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I don't know that my parents. I don't even think. Well, I don't think my parents don't even know what I do. They know that I work from home, and it's funny. Yeah, they probably just don't think I do anything all day.
I think my family still thinks I'm a recruiter, because that whole top of funnel situation I explained to you is too much, and it's fine. They love saying that. Oh, mi hija te va a ayudar con un trabajo. Just email her. She'll help you. So I think they enjoy that, and I don't take that away from them, no matter what.
I'm gonna have to ask my parents. What do you tell people I do? Um, Funny, just random. I just thought about this. Whenever I started my business in 2019, I had gone to breakfast at our taco place nearby by my mom's, and I was like, "Oh, mom, I started a business." And she's like, "Oh, okay. What did you start a business of?" And I said, "Oh, I'm selling myself." And I meant it as a joke, but she just looked at me like, "Oh, what?" But I mean, literally, I am selling myself.
Like, absolutely, but I'm dying over here on mute. I can already see her face.
I
Like,
know, right?
okay.
I know, and she knows me and my personality, so she's probably trying to figure out, like, well, I know you don't mean in la calle, but what do you
But
mean?
yeah, what do you mean?
I don't even know that I could fully explain it to her then. I don't even remember what the rest of the conversation was. I don't even, and it's like unlike me to me even make jokes like that, but apparently I needed to that day. Okay, so now tell us what has been some of the worst career advice that you've received?
This is a really good question. I think when I first started my quest for bettering myself as an employee in corporate America, and it's a quest I'm continuously on, some of my first mentors were Caucasian men or Caucasian women who I think can get away with, not saying their advice was bad per se. I think their advice was warranted and very good that they could pull it off themselves, or people that look like them could pull off, but I couldn't. And some of that advice definitely got me in trouble in the way that I communicated. So for example, some of my when I went from HP, I was managing 5 people, to Oracle managing 20. That was a very big jump of people management for me. I was ready for the challenge. I got to build my own team, and it was a very exciting time, but still motivating the masses as a leader of a big org was new to me. And so I remember hiring like a career coach, if you will, to help me. And some of his direction was very male, masculine aggression. That was not necessarily my style, but I quickly took it because I was like, esto es lo que se hace en corporate America, And I will say it didn't that wasn't my leadership style. So maybe it just didn't work. It didn't land very well. My team was global. I had people in Europe. I had people in, Latin America, all over. And that was bad advice. Good advice for a people leader, just lessons learned now, is there isn't one style for everyone. As a human, you have to adjust per human, right? You can't just have broad strokes and treat people the same way with the same expectations as much as you may want, right? Because if we think back, those are the managers we hate, right? You're like, why are we all under the same expectations? And so I will say, I try my very best to receive feedback from women that are in the same place as me, on the same path, because I find that we can commiserate with same problems and maybe even problem solve better than folks that have maybe gotten away with being that way. But that's not necessarily the right way for me.
Yes, yes, I love that. I always say that, take what you need from the piece of advice and then make it your own, because what'll work for someone may not work for you, and what works for you may not work for someone else. I definitely can see the differences now after working with a peer who was Caucasian, and she and I worked really great together, and we learned our styles just based in becoming friends in our leadership styles, but also how we ran the team. And so I was like, if it came to writing an email, I wrote the emails for the team. When it came to discussing the information, she presented it, because I could say the exact same words and it just did not come off, because I just don't have that you just got to know your personality, and it just wasn't in me, right? I think I've changed my personality since then as well. Not that I've changed myself, but me as a person, I've grown and changed, right? And so, she would deliver some message and everyone would see it as warm and fuzzy, even if she was telling you you're about to lose your job. Like, people were like, she's so nice. And in the background, like, and not that she's not a nice person, but she was like ruthless. Right. And I'm actually the person who's very considerate of everyone else, but I'm probably considered the ruthless person.
I find that because the stereotype, right? When you Google Latinas, you see Latina angry, Latina, other things that are more sexual in nature. But for the most part, Latinas are labeled as angry, right? Your Latina girlfriend's gonna beat you, right? And it's just a stereotype that has been permeating it. We're getting better. This generation is not going to tolerate it. And I love our children for that. But because of that stereotype, because of the very limited films or music that we make it into mainstream America, I find that I combat that too. I could throw in a happy, Friday, right, with a unicorn and say the same thing that my colleague is saying. And like, wow, are you upset today? And I'm like, what? No, like, it's just very direct to the point. And what do you mean, right? But I think it comes with having to shake that perception that people have developed about Latinas.
Yeah, definitely. It's so interesting because I would never even consider myself to be like an angry, spicy person, because my demeanor is very muted. My mom's demeanor is very muted. So, I didn't even realize that there was the angry Latina stereotype And now, now it makes sense. Now it makes sense why I would be told certain things and be like, but why would people think that?
I have a great story. I've always been taught in my work career to just get straight to the point, right? And I think it came from years of me being like fluffy, perhaps, like, too much information or too much fluff is what I used to hear. And so now I'm very organized in my emails, like who, what, why. They're very clean. And I had a manager that would say, it would be great if you asked Patty about her kids at soccer, or maybe if you asked about their weekend or whatever. And I remember saying to them in my annual review, like, is this something you're asking everyone to do? Because no one's asking me about like my kids potty training right now. And her face was like, oh. And I'm like, I'm happy to do it if it's like all of us are doing it. And I think it comes again from that, like they either want us to be labeled angry or maternal, right? Like the mom, the Latina, housekeeper, the Latina housemaker, right? But I have gotten so much better at pushing back and making sure people know, like, I hear you, but I also don't notice anyone else doing it. So are we all going to start doing this? And once you put it that way, I think people are like, oh, okay, I can't really push her around. Took me a long
Yeah.
time to get here, though.
Yeah. I was going to say that next, right? Like over time, you kind of build that up and you reflect back on all of those situations that, it just happens. We all have encountered those. And the more we talk about them, the more it can be exposed, right? Because we're just not used to talking about these, mostly because we may not even know who we can share this with. Your peer who looks like you may not feel like you can divulge that information to them, and you may feel embarrassed. I know that a lot of times when my boss spoke to me the way she did, I was embarrassed, and I would talk to one of my peers about it. And she'd be like, I can't believe she said that to you, right? But that's kind of where the conversation would end a lot of the time. And I think part of staying there was I was hoping to move into leadership. And then at some point in my mind, I realized like, okay, like the opportunity to move up to leadership is never going to happen. And it has nothing to do with an opportunity. It has to do with the fact that this person does not see me as a person that she wants in leadership.
And that's such a hard realization to come to, because I think we've been raised, no, regardless of your family background, to think, the American way is if you work hard, you will be noticed and you will be rewarded. But the reality is that culture is not so much so in corporate America for our people.
Right, right. And it's definitely more maybe blue collar too
Mm-hmm.
versus white collar because and even if you went back, I'm pretty sure white collar has always been less about
Yeah, it's all the politics.
your work and more about yeah.
I'm telling you. I mean, I think I said this the other day on a work call when I was advocating for our team to be a little bit more forthcoming with information of what people of color can expect in the interview process. I use the example that we don't know, like our dads, our uncles aren't SVPs of finance at a Fortune 500 or the director of technology. Like we didn't grow up with that, so it wasn't like that was permeating into. Now my kids, your kids are to be super lucky because being a director, being a leader in corporate America, how we talk in our emails, that's going to be normal to them. That's an easy attainable goal for them. Right now we're living the dream that our parents hoped we would achieve by being leaders in corporate
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I hear my son, he's only 6, say words that I'm like, I don't even think I knew that word until maybe I was in
America.
college.
So true.
It's just amazing. It's amazing. And that's how much a difference even if I had no degrees, right? I was still the same person because essentially a degree doesn't make you. You are who you are. You make yourself. I think that, it would still influence him, right? My parents had 0 degrees and here I am with a
Yeah.
PhD. So who you are is who you are, right? My parents instilled not just that education was important, but that I was important enough to achieve that.
And hello, let's celebrate your PhD because your career is amazing. You're highly educated. You're doing such amazing things. I don't think we celebrate you enough. So Woohoo.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't celebrate myself enough for sure. You guys don't even know. Okay, I do have the PhD up there. I was going to say, do I have my PhD up there? I do.
Good.
But I do have like other degrees on the floor that I need to put up. So the next question is, what has been some of the best career advice that you've received?
I love this. So the best advice I've received is recently. So I shared this on social media, but I got accepted into a leadership class here at Visa called Amplify Your Leadership Voice. It's primarily centered on using your voice for impact versus noise, which I really appreciate. Sometimes I feel like I just talk so much and nothing gets done. But that advice,
Yes.
so we've been getting taught by Cornell professors, and one of the pieces of advice she said is that women are so scared to do the next thing, go for that promotion, go for that bigger job, leave the company, do a risky thing. Whereas like men, oh, immediately, they without thinking, yep, sign me up. I don't even care what the job description is, right? And what she said was isolate the fear before you tackle the risk. And that to me was so black and white. And the premise of that is before you take the risk, there's a reason that you're held back. What is that? For example, for me, some of my things are, oh, I can't be without a job. I can't not have benefits, right? So if I put myself out there and they reject me, then and I'm unemployed, what happens, right? But if you isolate the fear and you realize I'm employable, I'm going to get another job, or they're not going to fire me, then all of a sudden the risk feels less risky.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. Women definitely need to take more risk. Next question is, what career advice do you want to share with our audience?
So, the best career advice that I can offer is be organized in your career, right? And not necessarily do I believe careers are linear or growth is linear. My growth has definitely been zigzaggy with a lot of downs sometimes. But if you organize yourself with a goal, and your goals are going to change, so I recommend that you revisit your goals often. But if you are goal oriented and I want a promotion, or I want to move departments, or I want to join a FANG company, a Facebook, a Apple, and are very descriptive with your goals, it makes the path much easier as you grow in your career. And what I mean by that is, for so many years, I knew that I wanted to climb the ladder, but I didn't really have a goal or a final destination. And you're not that I'm in a final destination mode, but things just kind of happened. And I'd be like, okay, I'll accept this interview. Okay, I'll take the offer. And I kind of allowed the universe or just hapstance sort of formulate my career. And I've been very lucky. But you want to own that, right? It's your career. And so being able to be very delineated in what jobs you want to take, what duties you want to have, what titles you want to own, I think make the process so much easier as you climb that ladder.
Yes, yes, I love that. I think for myself, right, just to kind of on the flip side of that, if you're a person that's very goal oriented, because for me, when I came into this company, I'm like, my eyes were like, I want to be a VP. And really, in most roles, like, I want to be at the top, top, top. And for myself, though, I think, and, everyone listening, just take what works for you and see where you are, right? Like, don't just take anything we're saying and it's gold. It's gold if it works for you. It's trash if not. And, for me, I think for like having that is great. But sometimes when I set goals, then I actually wrote down these notes from yesterday that I went with a client. Don't chain yourself to an idea. Don't chain yourself to a goal and remain curious as to where your career journey can go. Because when we fixate on this one tiny little position that seems like the world to us, we shut ourselves off to all the other opportunities that may come into us. Right. And so, yes, set a goal. Goals are important. You need to have somewhere you're aiming. Otherwise, you're just going to be floating around and the wind will take you. But by setting that goal, also just continue to look in the peripherals and see what's going on, right? What other opportunities coming to me? What is my intuition telling me?
No, I 100% agree. I think by allowing outliers, the phone call, a random call from a recruiter that you weren't expecting, take it. You don't know where it's going to lead. The title may not sound like my goal, that stretch goal, but it's a good company. So I absolutely agree with you. I think my advice is coming from a place where I was so disorganized with where I was going, that I think that kind of, not that it held me back, but maybe I could be a little further along than where I am now had I had more of a organized mentality towards that. But I don't regret anything. I mean, I've worked for some incredible companies, done some great work. What I do regret is not championing for salary. I used to never negotiate. I'd be like, okay, and then come to find out I was always below market. That's another advice. Research the salary. Make sure you ask for more. There's always more money there for us. Like, I do believe, especially Latinas. I mean, we already know we're pay equity report in November release that, at that time, I want to say it was something like 81 cents to the, dollar of a Caucasian male. So we know there's money on the table for us.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. There always is. And, to follow up on that, like if you're negotiating, because I know I attempted to negotiate when I came into this role, not this position, but into the company. And at the time they had the talent acquisition, recruiters, all of that laid out differently. And so, I was trying to negotiate with the recruiter and she told me no. Like she didn't even take it back to the hiring manager. She just told me no. Now being on this end, I realized what she did was not okay. And they've, changed the processes because who knows how many other people they were doing that to, because now like we have to approve, right? And they have to come back and it's a whole actual process versus it just being very verbal. She told me no. And then she also had the audacity to tell me that, I was getting a big raise from where I was coming from, which
Okay.
yes, I'm getting a big raise because I'm already underpaid working for a nonprofit.
Mm-hmm. People forget that part, that we're making up for years of being underpaid. Years.
Yes, yes. And fortunately, something I will say, is that one of my peers, she's now a director, but she really pushed for us to pay our staff more when we were hiring people. And I'm proud of that now. At first I was like, well, everyone else is making this. And she's like, yeah, but why not? It's not like it costs us anything to bring them in at the highest possible that we can. And now I do. I am one of the only people to do that, but it's because why not? In behavioral health, we're already underpaid. Why am I not going to bring these people in as high as possible that I can do it?
Yeah, of course. I don't even care what you were making before, unless I can't pay you, right? And then I'm like, oh, I got to be honest with you. I want to hire you, but I can't afford you, But other than that, to me, it doesn't matter. This is what the job is going to pay a purple person, like, nondescript of color, race, gender,
Yeah.
anything. And I'm going to give you as high as I can get away with all the time. I always have been this way.
That's great. Yeah. And there is, at least in corporate, there is always more, what I can bring people the highest, it's the highest that I can do it without approval.
Exactly.
If I really like a person, then I can actually go above that. And it sounded terrible. if the person is valued at a higher rate, I don't want to sound like if I like you, it's not like a personality. It's like a good fit thing.
No. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So now, was there anything else that you wanted to share with us?
Oh, I think this was so good. Thank you so much for having me. It was some really great questions. No one ever asked about my family, so thank you. I'll send them the podcast link. They'll enjoy being a part of it.
Yes. I like to share that because I feel like a lot of times, we see people in their professional careers and then we make these assumptions that, oh, she must have had family help her, or she must come from an affluent family, or, her family, we just make assumptions. Same thing for even people who are white, like two of my peers. I just assumed that they grew up middle class. And, one of them, she talked about like they sometimes had to sleep in the back of her dad's camper because they didn't have anywhere else to sleep or live. And I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't gotten to know her. And it really is like, okay, my assumption was you grew up middle class because you're white.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a boss too who, same thing, he grew up in the trailer parks and he shared that after I got to know him. But again, I would have not assumed that, right? And not saying that I assumed everyone, a person of color, is like me, but I kind of do. And then that's when some of this disconnect happens because, just because you're a person of color doesn't mean that you grew up like me either.
100%. I have some of my best friends are people of color who went to private school growing up, who are definitely upper middle class, So I love this question, though. I think it grounds us all on upbringing because I do think that influences who we are today in our careers.
Yeah, definitely. Did you want to share how anyone can reach you if they're interested in just following you on social media?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Celly_speaks on Instagram and Twitter. And then I'm Celinda Farias Appleby on LinkedIn. You can add me as a friend or you could follow me, whichever is your most preferred method. I'm pretty active on Instagram, but I will say Twitter is my most favorite channel. Like no one follows me there. I say all random things.
Why is Twitter? I want to know. I know I see you posting a lot there. Why is Twitter your favorite? I want to know. I like hop in and hop out of Twitter, but I just, Instagram's my favorite.
I mean, I love Instagram because it's pretty. So the aesthetic is really nice. And I feel like it's curated. I think, I see it more as like a Pinterest of ideas from people I love. But Twitter is kind of like a free for all, and I think people just go on there and say whatever they want. It's not so prim and proper, and I'll talk about my water heater problems, my children who I call my roommates. I'll talk about work, and so I feel like the expectation is you could be a little bit more yourself. No one is expecting you to show up with your suit on is kind of where I'm going with it. And I think that allows for a lot more genuine conversation.
It's funny you talked about, Instagram being aesthetic and stuff. You can look up like their natal charts, like their astrological charts, like of the companies. And Instagram's like a Libra, which is very much about the aesthetic and looking, pleasant. And I want to say Twitter is like an Aries, which of course, it's like, don't care. Just
whatever you want to say. Yeah. Fiery, you get the T is always on Twitter.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, Sally. I can't wait for everyone to hear this episode.
This was fantastic. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me on. And I know we're going to talk more after this.
Yes, you know it. Thank you for listening to the Manifest Your Career podcast with me, your host, Dr. Norma Reyes, a career and mindset coach. Learn more today on manifestyourcareer.com.